Okay, so I want everyone to just picture something for a second. Imagine a world where quantum mechanics isn't just, dry formulas on a blackboard. Imagine it's explained through poetry. And then imagine that those moments where you just zone out daydreaming aren't your brain taking a break. They're actually like valid scientific planes of reality.
Mhm.
And right at the center of all of this, haunting every single story, is one number.
137.
Exactly, 137. So welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are definitely not doing a standard book review. We're looking at a stack of documents here that honestly, it looks like it belongs in a theoretical physics lab that got raided by a Sufi mystic.
Mm.
We're talking about the works of Burak Coşkun. We've got novels like Kusur, which translates to The Flaw,
Right.
and Uglata, short stories from Hal Kritzi or Dream Crisis, and a uh, very intense manifesto called On Nature and Against Method.
It's a heavy stack, yeah,
Yeah.
both physically and mentally. And you're right, calling this a book review just feels wrong. It's
Yeah.
more like we're trying to decode an entire universe that Coşkun has built. It's this place where hard science, or I mean really hard, we're talking neutron star physics, just collides head on with philosophy, with fiction. It's dense. It's really dense, but it's fascinating.
And before we get to nuclear pasta, which I still can't believe is a real scientific term, but you promised me it is,
Oh, it's real.
we need to talk about the architect here.
Mhm.
Because when I was going through the notes, I couldn't quite pin him down. Who exactly is Burak Coşkun? We aren't doing a biography, but it feels like his CV is just bleeding into the pages of these stories.
That's the first puzzle piece, isn't it? If you just look at the bio on the back of, say, Science and Poetry or The Flaw, you get this very rigorous academic profile. He's a physicist engineer from ITU, that's Istanbul Technical University.
Right.
He did research on neutron stars at the Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden, then theoretical astrophysics in Germany. He writes academic papers on super dense neutron superfluids.
Which sounds like something that would instantly give me a migraine. It sounds like you should be in a lab coat somewhere yelling at a particle accelerator.
I mean, it's dense stuff, for sure. But then you flip the coin. This is the same guy who translated the Richard Feynman graphic novels for Alpha Publishing. The same guy who writes these poetry books where he's practically trying to rhyme with differential equations.
So he's not just a scientist writing sci-fi on the side.
Not at all. He seems to be someone who genuinely believes that science needs fiction to actually function properly.
That's a really bold claim. I mean, usually hard sci-fi writers use the science to make the plot seem plausible, right? Engage the warp drive so we can get to the alien planet faster. You're saying he does the opposite. He uses the plot to explore the science.
Precisely. In the preface to his novel Kusur, he basically says it out loud. He says fiction is a tool for science. He argues that physicists already use analogies like waves or particles to explain nature, and those analogies are, in themselves, flaws.
Hacks, sort of.
They're hacks. They aren't the real thing. They're stories we tell ourselves to understand the math. So Coşkun is just saying, okay, if science is already using storytelling, I'm just going to take it to its logical conclusion.
Okay, so let's test that theory. Let's dive into Kusur the Flaw. It seems like the best entry point into this Coşkun universe.
Mhm.
We have this main character, Fazal Zen. He's an astroparticle physicist at Caltech. Sounds prestigious, but he's absolutely miserable. What's his deal?
Fazal is our avatar for academic burnout. But it's not just that I work too many hours kind of burnout. He's completely disillusioned with the state of physics itself. He's sitting in these conferences listening to string theorists argue with loop quantum gravity people, and he just feels like it's all become politics.
He's like them bullying physicists.
That phrase, right, it's so good. He thinks physics has just stalled, that it's all posturing and people shouting over each other without making any real fundamental progress.
And his obsession is this number we mentioned at the top, 137. I've heard it called the God number or the Holy Grail of physics. Can you break this down for us without a whiteboard if possible? Why does Fazal care so much about 137?
So technically, it's the fine structure constant. It's often written as roughly 1 over 137 in the simplest possible terms. It's the DNA of light and matter. It's a dimensionless number, which is key. It means it doesn't matter if you measure in meters, inches, or light years, the number is always the same. It dictates how an electron interacts with a photon.
So it basically controls how light touches stuff.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. It controls how reality holds together. If this number were even slightly different, matter as we know it would fall apart. Stars wouldn't ignite the way they do. Carbon wouldn't form. Life couldn't exist. So Fazal looks at this number and sees a code. He stops seeing it as just a value on a page, and he starts hallucinating it.
Right. There's that scene where he's looking at these complex equations and he just starts shouting, "These are solutions, pure solutions." He's not seeing ink on paper anymore. He's seeing geometry floating in the air.
Yes.
It's like he's seeing the matrix code.
And that's a central theme for Coşkun, the transition from linear algebra to pure geometry. Fazıl realizes that the anomalies in his vision, these glitches he thinks he's seeing, are actually a glimpse into a higher, more perfect mathematical reality. We humans call them flaws or hallucinations because our brains just aren't built to process that level of perfection.
That reminds me so much of the conversation he has with old Fazil.
Mhm.
There's this completely mind-bending analogy about a film strip. I swear I had to read that part 2 or 3 times because it just completely flipped how I think about time.
It's one of the best explanations of time I've ever read in fiction, honestly. He says, imagine holding a reel of film. You had the whole movie right there in your hand. All the frames, past, present, future, they all exist simultaneously. Do those individual frames have time? No, they're just static images. Time only exists when you run them through the projector, when you introduce change.
So change creates time. The movement from one frame to the next creates the illusion of a flow.
Exactly. Events define time. If nothing ever happens, there is no time. So Coşkun is pushing back against this old Newtonian idea that time is just this constant river flowing in the background, whether we're here or not. He's saying, no events, no projector, no time. It's an illusion created by the mechanism of change itself.
That is.
Yeah.
Wow. That's uncomfortably deep. It makes you wonder if our entire perception of reality is just this projector running at a certain speed.
Yeah.
And if it stops, does the universe just sit there, frozen? This actually segues perfectly into the next book on the stack, Hayal Kritsi, Dream Crisis. Because in these stories, it feels like the projector is broken. Or maybe someone is messing with the lens.
Or maybe it's been hacked. Yeah, Hayal Kritsi moves away from the university campus and goes straight into the psyche. This is where we really encounter this concept he calls gündüşü, or daydream. But again, like with everything else, Coşkun isn't just talking about, fantasizing about a vacation or zoning out in a long meeting.
No, not at all. In the story Trojan 137, it feels much, much more sinister. We have this character, Odetta. She's living in these weird, repeating 90-minute sleep cycles. And there's this creeping dread throughout the story that the characters that they're not real.
It's basically the simulation theory, but with a terrifying twist. The characters, Odetta, Shizan, Alp, they start finding these little hints that they might be Trojan horses, specifically Trojan 137 inside a massive system, and their attempts to wake up or question their reality is seen by the system as a virus that needs to be purged. There's this chilling line in the story. It says something like, Trojan horse 137 is out of commission. Reason for termination, attempting to interact with reality on a different manifold.
I got actual chills when I read that. It implies that what we call waking up, seeking truth, doing science, philosophy, is actually a glitch in the program.
It poses this massive question, doesn't it? Is sleep the only passive state? Or is humanity constantly asleep? And only these brief moments of intense discovery are true wakefulness. And if you do manage to wake up, does the system just delete you to protect itself?
It goes right back to that film strip. If you stop the projector to look too closely at a single frame, if you try to analyze the movie instead of just watching it, the movie ends for you.
Yeah.
And speaking of systems deleting things, I really want to talk about Uglada and the story Ida.
Yeah.
Because this feels like where the science fiction meets ego activism, but like a really weird quantum eco-activism.
It's ecological quantum physics, if that can even be a genre. So Ida refers to Mount Ida, the Kaz Mountains in Turkey, which is a place historically steeped in mythology. The story is set in 2245. And you have these oligarchs who are destroying nature to try and achieve immortality. But the trees in this world aren't just wood and leaves.
They're mind gates, right? That's what he calls them.
Yes. Coşkun builds this incredible idea of the Logos network. He suggests that nature, specifically ancient trees, acts as a kind of biological internet that connects consciousness across different planes of reality, or manifolds. So if you cut down the forest, you aren't just losing oxygen and biodiversity, you are severing the physical connection to the Logos, the universal reason itself.
So it's like Spinoza's God is nature meets the Matrix, or even Avatar. Destroying the physical world is literally, it's like you're lobotomizing the universe.
That's a great way to put it, lobotomizing the universe. And this is where Coşkun's dual identity as a scientist and a philosopher really shines. He uses the ancient Greek concept of logos, which is logic, word, reason, and pits it against mythos, which is story, dream, intuition. In our modern world, we've prioritized logos industry, data, concrete, and we've tried to kill mythos. But in Uglata, he shows they are biologically linked. You can't have one without the other. If you kill the mythos, which is the trees, the logos, which is reason, dies right along with it.
And this frustration, this real anger at how we've separated science from nature and emotion, it really just explodes in the manifesto. Do the Userine, the Yontame, Karshan, nature and against method. This isn't a story. This is him basically yelling at his colleagues, isn't it?
It is a very eloquent, very well-argued bilingual yell, yes.
Okay.
The foreword, which is written Gunsel Unkol from the near future, Datsa 2025, it calls the text a challenge to the barren suffocation of our age. And Coşkun is attacking what he calls the zombie flow of modern academia.
Zombie flow. I love that phrase. It sounds like a bad horror movie, but I'm guessing he means something very specific about how research is done today.
He's talking about the publish or perish culture. He means scientists who are just churning out these tiny incremental papers to keep their jobs and get tenure, but who never ask the big, dangerous paradigm-shifting questions. They're just going with the flow, but they're intellectually dead. He's channeling the philosopher Paul Feyerabend, who wrote a famous book called Against Method. And the idea is that real scientific discovery doesn't follow a neat little checklist of hypothesis, a test conclusion. Real discovery is anarchic. It's messy. It requires intuition. It requires mythos.
And this is where we have to talk about the pasta. I teased it in the intro. In the middle of this incredibly high-minded manifesto about anarchy and science, he starts talking about lasagna and spaghetti. Please, tell me this is real physics.
It is 100% real physics. It's a field of study called nuclear pasta.
You're kidding me. Come on. You're making that up.
I swear I am not. It is an accepted astrophysical term. When you go deep into the crust of a neutron star, the pressure is so unbelievably intense that atomic nuclei get crushed into these bizarre shapes. First, they form little blobs, which physicists actually call the Noki phase.
Oh my God.
Then, as you go deeper, they get squeezed into long rods, that's the spaghetti phase, and finally, they get flattened into sheets, the lasagna phase. Coşkun uses this as a perfect example to explain his Rose postulate.
Rose, what does that stand for?
Randomly organized structural entities. He's arguing that the fundamental structure of reality isn't just forces and particles, but it's geometry, it's topology, hidden in these seemingly random structures, just like the nuclear pasta. He has this amazing line. He says, "I combine pasta with physics on the minimal surfaces of soap bubbles."
That is bizarrely poetic. And it sounds delicious, though I assume eating a piece of neutron star lasagna would probably kill you instantly.
It would be a very, very heavy meal, yes. But his point is to show that the universe has this hidden sense of geometry that appears in the most unexpected, almost funny places. It links right back to that idea from Kusur. That reality seems flawed or random, but within that randomness, there is a perfect structure hiding.
Which leads us directly into the last couple of books, Bill and Vish here, Science and Poetry, because here he is literally trying to force these two worlds to collide on the page. I was looking at the poem Zinsir, which means a chain, and he's name-dropping famous mathematicians like Lagrange and Euler right in the middle of the stanza about feelings.
It's jarring at first, isn't it? We're just not used to seeing the name Lagrange next to words like heartbreak or destiny. But in that poem, Zinsir, he talks about the epic struggle to unite time and space. He describes them as gods and giants tied by an invisible chain. He's turning the physics problem of unification, which is the biggest problem in modern science, into a mythological tragedy.
And I noticed the sketches in the book, too. It's not just text. There are these little hand-drawn geometric shapes, pendulums, crystals. It feels like you're looking at one of Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks or something.
That is exactly the vibe he's going for. He's trying to visualize the rhythm of the universe. And there's a very specific cultural angle here that's crucial to understanding his whole project, the Blue Anatolia or Mavi Anadolu theme.
Right. He makes a really big point that science isn't just some Western European invention.
He pushes back hard against that narrative. He traces the roots of the Logos all the way back to ancient Anatolia, to Thales, to Anaximander, to the Ionian school. These were people living on the Aegean coast of modern-day Turkey thousands of years ago. They were the first to say, hey, maybe earthquakes aren't caused by angry gods. Maybe they're caused by natural processes. Coşkun wants to reclaim that heritage. He's effectively saying, we did this first. This geography is where the Logos was born, and we can do it again.
That's a really powerful message. It grounds all of this high-flying quantum physics in actual soil in the history of a specific place. But I have to play devil's advocate for a minute here. We've talked about the number 137, simulations, nuclear pasta, ancient Anatolian history, and Sufi mysticism. Who is this actually for? Is the average reader going to pick this up and get it, or are they just going to be hopelessly confused?
That is the elephant in the room, isn't it? This is definitely not beach reading. You are not going to breeze through the flaw while you're sunbathing. I think this is for a very specific type of person. He calls them the merakla öğrenci, the curious student. It's for the kind of person who, when they see a term like baryonic acoustic oscillations, doesn't close the book but immediately opens Wikipedia to figure it out.
I saw a user review online that said something like, "This isn't a novel, it's a thesis disguised as a novel." And that sounds like a pretty harsh critique for a fiction book.
It sounds harsh, but I honestly think Coşkun would take that as a huge compliment. Remember, in the preface to Kusur, he ironically apologizes for boring the reader with long scientific dialogues. He knows exactly what he's doing. He wants to challenge the reader. He's fighting against that zombie flow in the readership, too. He doesn't want passive consumers who just want to be entertained. He wants active decoders who want to be challenged by the text.
It feels like even finding these books is part of the test. I did see they're available on platforms like Kitapure, which is great, but they aren't on the bestseller table at the airport. You have to actively hunt for them. It feels like stumbling upon a secret academic journal or an old grimoire.
Exactly. It's a niche within a niche, no doubt about it. But for those readers who are willing to enter that niche, it offers what he's ultimately aiming for, a grand unification.
The unification of logos and mythos.
Yes. In another book, Lightbringer, or Işık Ditiren, he uses the symbol of the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. It represents the whole cycle. The universe is a story, mythos, that is written in the language of mathematics, logos. You need both to understand the loop. You can't just have the math and you can't just have the story. They're part of the same snake.
So Fazil looking for the number, Odetta trying to wake up from the simulation, Amalfi trying to save the trees. They're all just trying to see the whole snake, not just the individual scales.
That's a beautiful way to put it. They are all trying to step outside their own manifold just long enough to see the true shape of reality.
Well, we've been swimming in the manifold for a while now. As we start to wrap up this deep dive into the Coşkun universe, what's the one thing that really sticks with you? What should our listener take away from all this density?
For me, it's a line from the manifesto. Science is by nature anarchist. I just love that because it gives all of us permission to be wrong, to be weird, and to question the established rules. Coşkun is reminding us that today's standard model was yesterday's heresy. And if you want to find the next 137, you have to be willing to be called a flaw in the system. You have to be willing to break the method.
Be the glitch you want to see in the world.
Exactly.
That's a great takeaway. I want to leave our listeners with a final thought from one of his other stories, Kishibaki. We've talked a lot about simulations and dreamers today, and that story asks this really haunting question. If 137 is the code of the universe and we are all just daydreams on a manifold, then who is the dreamer?
And that's the question that'll keep you up at night.
It really is. Keep decoding the signal, everyone. We'll see you in the next deep dive.
See you there.